Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Sabah al khair. Thank you much for joining. This is the joint webinar of Meena's online and game analysts. A few words about the game analysts, and I think Nisreen will share some introduction to Meena's online as well. Game analysts, we are a legal cross-border and investment risk advisory firm focusing on emerging markets, having offices in Hamburg in Germany, Dubai, Nairobi, Kenya, Cairo, Egypt, and a very small presence in Abuja, Nigeria, focusing on emerging markets, advising clients mostly for market entry, corporate commercial, and due diligence, among others. Next. Yeah, next, I think our profiles you can read later on when we distribute the PowerPoints. Next. The aim of the webinar is to give a quick update about the markets in Iraq and UAE. There's some interesting developments after COVID, hopefully, has been passed, and right now economic recovery is kicking in most of the jurisdictions. And so this should give a quick idea about economic development in the UAE as well in Iraq. Iraqi part will Nisreen handling, and as well about some legal aspects which might be helpful. Of course, given the limited time, it would not be possible to give in-depth analysis of all the aspects, but we're happy to address some of the questions in the Q&A session, which will happen afterwards. And of course, please feel free to contact us at any time. We'll be happy to have a conversation with you and to give some more insights on those topics. Let's kick it off. Next slide. Like most of the jurisdictions worldwide, COVID had a very, very determined impact on the economy. The UAE had a negative growth of 3.5% in 2020. The UAE immediately implemented very strong policies to counter COVID, to limit the spread, and as well to reactivate the economic growth, which was going great till today. So 2021 was 3.8% growth according to the UAE Central Bank, and in 2020 it's expected to have a recovery of 5.4% GDP. While non-GDP growth was 5.3%, which is, I think, a very strong indicator for the private sector growth in the UAE. Inflation rate, of course, we all know supply chain disruption and also the conflict in Ukraine had a negative impact worldwide. We feel it in Africa, we feel it in the Middle East, we feel it in Europe. However, the UAE had in 2022 currently 3.7% inflation, which is relatively low in comparison to many other jurisdictions, in particular with the European Union area. And 2023, we expect, according to the IMF, 2.8% inflation, which is quite moderate. Next. Probably as you might be aware, UAE is one of the top exporters and also importers. It's a hub, it's a trading hub, one of the biggest in the Middle East. By far, oil production and oil refined products is massive. You have gold, jewelry, and diamonds with the DMCC as one of the biggest commodity hub in the Middle East, heavily trading within Africa and Europe, and as well Asia. Saudi Arabia is one of the top destinations of Emirati exports, as well Iraq, India, Switzerland, Oman, and China. The biggest supplier markets for the UAE, you would not wonder, is China, the United States, India, Japan, and Germany for various goods and services. The UAE is not only interesting because it's definitely one of the leading hubs worldwide in terms of trade, but definitely has a lot of free trade agreements, double taxation agreements, not only with the European countries, Western countries, but also with Africa and Asia. So this makes it really a hub here in the region for various purposes. Next. Business opportunities, it's just some examples you might be aware of. Of course, import-export is still massively with Jebel Ali and other trading hubs in the UAE. Healthcare sector is still a very attractive sector, even though after consolidation, COVID, and going through different difficulties, but healthcare sector is still definitely a vibrant sector in the UAE. Real estate right now is a complete uptick. You can see massive transactions. I don't know the recent figures about the pipeline right now per month in millions or less than billions, but I can say the UAE market in real estate has a massive uptick due to investments from all over the region. Then information technology and e-commerce. E-commerce, we have experienced a lot of clients, a lot of investors who are more and more in e-commerce sector. And then don't forget fintech technology startup sector, which is very vibrant in the UAE and pushed by Dubai as well. Also for the local Emirati population, make it very attractive with a lot of incentives to set up there a startup. Okay, next. Probably some words on market entry strategy. The various structures we picked four, which are very common. I think it's very important when you try to enter the Iraqi market or the UAE market, which applies equally. I think it's very important to understand how you want to go into the market, what would be your risk appetite, what would be your investment, what would be your budget. So first of all, I think what would be interesting is having an establishment of a subsidiary of an international company, entering the market, setting up your own entity. This will give you a broad exposure to the market knowledge, and having actually a strong presence locally, independent from a holding company. Which, however, requires quite a lot of management, quite a lot of capex, and quite a lot of involvement locally. If this is not wanted, another option might be appointing a local distributor, agent, or sales representative. This has the advantage of having a very light, less risky, and a structure with less capital in investment. However, the problem would be here that it would probably take a little bit longer, because most distributors probably would not take your product in a preference, which will be a management of your brand and your product in the market will be not as quick as being set up by yourself. Another option, mostly for in the hospitality sector and food and restaurants, you have appointing of a franchisee. You have very successful franchise structures from all over the world, from Lebanon, from France, very interesting brands, even homemade brands, what can be franchised. Mostly UAE, if this works in the UAE and a local market, there's a good chance of success that it works in one of the other GCC markets. So that's another very viable option. And of course, lastly, you have a joint venture structure. Usually this combines foreign technology, foreign know-how, and foreign expertise, and probably as well capital, with a local partner who is usually strong in supply chain, distributorship network, and in local contacts. So this combination is often a very preferred option and a very strong and a successful one. So again, depending where you want, what is your appetite, there might be four options, but definitely as well more, just to give an overview. And then Judy, next. Very quickly, some words to KYC process. So KYC process is very important. If you go into new markets, might be Iraq or UAE, just here some a quick overview what to do. It's very important that you are careful in selecting your business partner. Might be a joint venture partner, might be a distributor, or a business partner in general who joins your company as a shareholder. Usually it starts with a KYC document, a questionnaire, so you will extract all the important information. You will collect company documents and will then in the end assess it. And many times you will also have a compliance check with compliance tools to make sure that you don't interact with a party probably which has reputational issues or probably has some negative track record, and to associate with such a partner probably might not be the best way to start to enter a market. So that's so far from my side. I will hand over to Nisreen. So Nisreen, please start your presentation, and maybe you can also give some insights about Meena's online, and then start with your part. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Gregor. Just let me take this opportunity because we have a friend also from the Germany Trade and Invest, which is Mrs. Amira. She is here. She is actually for Balkan countries responsible, but she is very interested in the Middle Eastern markets as well. So, Amira, can you say a few words? I'm not so sure if you can because you are very busy normally. You hear me? I will share her LinkedIn later, so I don't think that you can hear me now. Okay, so let me share my presentation quickly. Thank you again. It was very interesting also for me, Gregor, to know about all these details about especially the UAE market. So let me share this with you. I think this one. Can you see my presentation? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let me present it. Okay. Sorry, it's not going to presentation mode now. Okay. I'm gonna start with a little bit introducing myself, our company as well. I'll give you a country overview of Iraq, political situation, economics overview, oil price development and oil demand, and business opportunities, some investment examples and some incentives from both regions, Kurdistan region of Iraq and Iraq. We will learn later on what it is. Then business practices and risks and challenges. So I'm actually from Germany. My parents are from Syria. I have already lived in 6 countries, but sorry, in 8 countries, speak 7 languages. And I have, prior to my assignment or my work position as the head of the German foreign trade chambers here in Iraq for 6 years, I used to work for 2 big Japanese companies. And then I changed in 2016. And this year I started my own company like 6 months ago. This is a company, a one-stop shop for exporters and investors for especially developing markets. And we have also trade analysis website, which I will show you later a little quickly, maybe in the Q&A session, if you are interested in this. This is to show exactly which products are going to what countries, what documentation you need, how much is it sold to each country, and so on. So our main focus is, as I said, emerging markets. We are very much focused on Pakistan, on Iraq, on the UAE, and on Saudi Arabia at the moment as well. So what are we offering? Oh, sorry, it's not. Oh, okay, now. So we are offering business partner search, legal services, logistics, recruitment, accounting, bookkeeping, office and office solutions, market research, market entry strategies, due diligence, background information on business partners, psychological profiles, and so on, export loans and letters of credits, and sourcing as well. This is our office locations in the UAE, in Iraq, and Pakistan. Hopefully it will be more in the future. So let's get started with our main presentation. So where is exactly Iraq? For those who doesn't know it or don't know it, Iraq is a country in Southeast Asia. It shares borders with Saudi Arabia, with Kuwait, with Iran, with Turkey. There are 19 governorates in Iraq, and please, for those who are not familiar with Iraq, I want you to also memorize this information because it is very important for your business. There are 19 governorates in Iraq. 15 of them are governed by the central governments, and 4 of them are governed by the Kurdistan region of Iraq. It's a semi-autonomous region, and is often abbreviated as KRG or KRI. So whenever you hear these abbreviations, you have to know that they are talking about this region, which is in the north of Iraq, which is basically, if I can go back, somehow I cannot go back in my presentations. Sorry, but I wanted to show you on the map. So we have around 40 million people here. Of those, 68% are under 30 years old, and 30% of them are under 15 years old. And they are expecting 30 years from now that we will almost double in the population and 71 million. So, okay, what is the political situation? So there is a regional government, and there is, of course, one state, which is the Republic of Iraq. But within this state, there's a semi-autonomous region in the north of Iraq, where mostly the Kurdish population lives. Not only, but most of them, the majority of them. It has its own jurisdictions, its own rules, and so on. And also sometimes the ministries are independent from each other, and the authorities as well. So you have to keep this in mind. There's sometimes, of course, there is a dispute, especially about the split of oil reserves. For example, there was a federal court ruling a few months ago because Iraq, as KRG, was independently selling oil, and which was actually based on an agreement that's a long time ago. But the federal court in Central South has ruled that is unconstitutional, and so it affected many projects in the oil sector. KRG didn't really accept it, but we will see. So if you have any projects in the oil sector, please also follow up this ruling as well from the federal court. The new government formation, we didn't have a government or an intermediate government we had for 3 years. There were demonstrations end of 2019, and the PM resigned, and then we have a new 3 years. There was an intermediate government. They couldn't really agree on PM and president and so on. And now we finally have a president, thanks God. So this is the basis for the new PM designate, which is Mr. Al-Sudani, and he's promised, he has time, I think 3 weeks from now, to form a new government, and I think he's in the process right now. So follow this closely as well. So he promised to strengthen the industry, the agriculture, private sector, and end corruption. So in general, you can say that Iraqi politicians or politicians here in general are influenced very much by Turkey, by the United States, and to a large extent by Iran, especially in the Central South, sometimes also against national interests. There is what is interesting about what happened now is that there was a large amount of the oil sales that was accumulated now from the last few years that couldn't be spent because the intermediate government didn't have the authority to spend all the income that they did from the oil, and now this money is 87 billion US dollars locked up in the central bank. So everyone is hopeful that they will top it up for next year's government budget. And we will later on learn that the government budget is very much connected to oil sales because they are generating almost 90% of their government budget from oil sales. Not so much from taxes and other resources, but really from oil sales. So this gives room for a lot of projects. We will later on, I will a little bit talk more in detail about that. So economic overview, GDP is around 5,000 US dollar compared to per capita, of course. Compared to Turkey, it's 8,000. Iran is almost twice as Iran and 5 times higher than Syria. And the total GDP was approximately 209 billion US dollar in 2021. And according to the World Bank assessment, it is accounting to upper middle class income group. It shrank, of course, because of the political situation, pandemic, and so on, but it will rise again, rose again by 9%, which is the highest rise among the Gulf countries. It comprises, the GDP comprises from agriculture, smaller part, 3%, industry, 51%, very much connected, industry is very much connected to the oil sector, and services, very much connected to the public sector as well. 65% is dominated by the oil, and this makes also almost 100% of all exports, almost 100%. 90% of the government budget, because Iraq is the 5th largest oil exporter in the world. Industry is small businesses, 96%, food processing, metal processing, the rest of forests like oil and gas, only 4%. Agriculture, outdated methods, little investments, lands are irrigated by the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, and then rain more in the northern area. Services, public sector, almost 85% of, it's very, very large. We have a very huge public sector, not so much private sector here. It is growing, of course, and they also know that diversification of the economy is very important for the stability of the economy. So they have their focus on this as well, but you have to know that 85% of the working population in Iraq is working directly or indirectly in the public sector. Then we have retail, bank, religious tourism, domestic tourism, religious tourism. We have the 2nd largest pilgrimage for Muslims, pilgrimage place, which is in the south of Karbala. We have almost 60 million pilgrims per year. Sometimes they say 70 million. So it's a very difficult and complex country. It's not so easy to do business here, also from a really practical side that I can tell you, but also from the assessment of the World Bank ease of doing business. Transparency rate, there is a problem with corruption. Definitely, there always corruption, sorry. They want to end it, of course. There are improvements that we can see. But as I said, don't, let's say, don't get demotivated to invest or doing trade here, because if you can make it in Iraq, I guess you can make it everywhere. It's really not easy to do business here, but also it's a very promising country as well, and at the same time. So, sorry. Then main exports, petroleum, chemicals, textiles, leather, the main imports, broadcasting equipment, refined petroleum, automobiles, machinery, transport, and so on. So trading partners, mainly China, Turkey, India, Iran, South Korea. They are a member of OPEC and other also let's say, how can I say it, commissions or committees as well. So the economy is very volatile, as it is highly dependent on oil. There's no sovereign wealth funds, there's a small private sector, and there's political instability as well. So oil price, why should you observe this, or why is this important for your business? Because simply, if you do business with the public sector, and most of the financial funds are coming from the from the public sector, they are generated by oil sales, and they always have a price set that they calculate their budget with. So this year, for example, I give you an example, $67 per barrel, and we had sales like around $83. So you can calculate that they will not be so much, hopefully, when not other, let's say, factors influence this, not so much problems with the payment. However, so if you do, especially with the public sector, any business, watch it very closely and know what the the government household budget was, or the government budget, how much was it calculated with, how much US dollar per barrel. Then business opportunities. Iraq is a developing country. It's in the reconstruction phase. They have suffered terrorism, they have suffered several wars, and they are like in the phase of reconstructing. So there are a lot of opportunities here, of course. Political situations, sometimes other, let's say situations influence this the business opportunities very, very much. But in general, we have opportunities in the logistics. For example, aviation, link between cities, railway, ports, and so on. And the biggest railway project all over the Middle East, around $80 billion. We have agriculture, we have industry and construction, water management, we have energy project, also renewable energy projects, pharmaceutical project, PPP projects. There is one with a German company which is a public-private partnership project. And this is about passport printing and ID card printing with the Ministry of Interior in Central South. Then we have also possibilities and the projects in the field of recycling and environment protection. You can see here that Iraq is the fourth largest project market in the Middle East. Most of the projects are with the public sector. They're around energy, construction, water, and transport. Here you can see the active projects in execution, this one here, and then pre-execution. And this is all in billion US dollar, of course. So let me also show you, these projects are mostly tendered, not all of them, but most of them are tendered. Now let me show you some projects which are actually investments without tendering. The people came here and had their own ideas, which I also encourage everyone who wants to do any business or investments with Iraq to really actively approach the business partners or government ministries and so on. So let me show you 3 examples of 3 different fields in KRG and also in Central South. So for example, there's a real estate. In the field of real estate, Emar, maybe everyone knows it from the UAE, have built a shopping center and also housing. Then there is a project in retail, foods, Carrefour, which is owned by an Emirati investor, and then transportation, which is Karim. Okay, so you can of course, without approaching any authority, or let's say not having any license, you can do business, you can invest. However, if you decide, for example, to go through an investment commission or an investment authority, there is the possibility of receiving a license, and this license has of course some requirements as well, but as well also many incentives, like free taxes for 5 to 10 years, exemption of import fees, land allocation. You can also, you don't have to, the money that you invested and is generated as a profit, you don't have to reinvest it. You can really take it out of the country. And then you can also employ foreign employees and many other as well, guarantees that the state will not nationalize the investments and so on. So you can have this, you can approach them. If you want, I can give you the addresses later on. So you can approach them actively and suggest your project. They will not come to you, this is for sure. So this is really, you have to go and present your idea. So business practice, as I said, be aware that there are 2 separate regions with separate jurisdictions, separate laws, cultures, and so on. You have to build very strong networks in business and politics, collect information, know what the culture are, know what the business etiquette is, know the market, conduct a market analysis. We can offer one if you like, payment modalities, watch the political situation very, very closely. Okay, so this is very much connected to how your business is influencing your business very much. The right partner, of course, watch out for people with a good reputation, have someone recommended either by an existing partner, a friend, or someone or something. You can also, if you have a partner already and you want to know some background information, we can do that for you, do due diligence as well. Then you have to ensure that the companies are properly registered, have the proper licenses. You have to build trust. You have to approach them again. No one will come to you and say, hey, let's invest. This is a great idea. You want to invest it. You have to really come and actively create demand. You have to be flexible and patient, identify what is exactly their needs, if necessary, adjusted. And then maybe one competitive advantage of all international companies is really a good after-sales service. Risks and challenges, there's a problem with corruption, yes. They try to fight it, sometimes successfully or gradually. Then security situation, if you want, we can also do reports on that, but mostly it is a little bit more secure in the south, or actually much more stable and secure in the north than in the south, sorry. Political situation, dependence on oil revenues, especially important when you do public sector projects, payment difficulties, constantly changing import regulations, but also other laws, counterfeit products. Spreading of rumors, unfortunately, a very common strategy here, to talk bad about your project, about your companies, and so on, or they try to really block your project. So you have to have a strong partner who also represents your interests here. So that's it from my side. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to have a 30 minutes free session. So that's it. So all of the risks can be mitigated. So if you like, we can also, if you have your own risks, of course, then we can talk also about that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Nisreen. I think right now it's Abdul Hamid who's going to present on the legal side a little bit.
Thank you, Nisreen, very much for your information. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be with you today. Actually, I will talk about companies forms in UAE and also in central Iraq, and also IP protection in both countries and tax system in both countries. And I will do it very quickly because I know your precious time. Can you go to the next slide? If we want to talk about companies in forms in UAE, you will see that there are three types companies in mainland, which is established inside the UAE, like LLC companies, limited by shares, joint stock company, branch of foreign companies, or even branch of GCC companies, one person LCC. And also there is a free zone companies, which is 100% foreign ownership, and also offshore companies in Jabal Ali and also in Ras Al Khaimah. For the mainland companies, actually, according to the new law, they permitted 100% foreign ownership, but for certain businesses. But in free zone and offshore, it's 100% ownership by the foreign. Can you go to the next slide? Regarding the company forms, actually in central of Iraq, it's different from KRI because, as Nisreen mentioned, that there is two different in culture and also different in legal system. So I focusing because I know your time, so I focus on center of Iraq. There is also LLC companies, joint stock companies, branch office of foreign company, holding companies. But actually, the main problem here is that 51% shall be owned by the Iraqi partner and 49% by the foreigner, which is different in the KRI. It's permitted 100% ownership, and also the permitting representative office, which is cancelled from Iraqi Central. So it's a little bit different. Can you go to the next slide? Regarding the intellectual property in UAE, there are several laws which governing trademarks and also copyrights and neighboring rights, and also which is governing protection of industrial property, patents, or industrial drawings. The competent authority for IP in UAE, it's actually one authority, it's Ministry of Economy, which is the competent authority to register and protect your intellectual property. Regarding international treaties, which UAE are part of it, it is part of Berne Convention, being treaty, Budapest Treaty, Madrid Protocol, Nice Agreement, Patent Cooperation Treaty, Paris Convention. In order to get your IP registered in UAE for trademarks, it takes about 120 days to get your final certificate of registration. For copyrights, around 3 days. For patents, it's up to 52 months in order to get it finally registered there. Can you go to the next slide? For central of Iraq, there is also several laws which is governing the IP. Law number 21, 1957 concerning trademarks, law number 65 regarding patents, and also law number 3 of 1971 copyrights. The competent authority actually are different here. For trademarks, it's Ministry of Industrial and Minerals, and for copyrights, Ministry of Culture, National Center for Authors' Rights and Neighbors. For patents and industrial design, Ministry of Planning. International treaties, Center of Iraq are part of it. Patent Cooperation Treaty, Paris Convention, Singapore Authority on the Law of Trademarks, WIPO Convention. Actually, for timeline, for trademarks, it's about around 28 months to get your final certificate. For copyrights, actually, it was not available, but I expect it might be maybe 3 to 5 months. For patents, it takes 2 to 3 years to get your final acceptance of registration because it's go through many procedures. And finally is the tax system in both countries. For taxes, actually in UAE, there is only now VAT 5%, but in the mid of 2023, they will apply corporate tax on corporate or even on individual who carry out the trade inside UAE. But they have made to 0% for taxable income up to 375,000 Emirati dirham and 9%, which is above 3,750. And for double taxation treaty, actually UAE have more than 139 countries, which like Egypt, USA, KSA. Iraq is already signed with UAE, but it does not come into force until now. And finally, if we come to taxes in Iraq, central of Iraq, can you go to the next slide, Julie? Yes. That is not applicable, but corporate tax is about 15%. And if you are working in oil and gas sector, it's about 35%. And personal income is about 3 up to 15%. And for double taxation treaties, mostly center of Iraq signed a multiple bilateral, but mostly of them are not come into force. And that's it from my side.
Excuse me, sorry for interruption. Regarding the taxes part, in Iraq, we also have the sales tax for some sectors, especially for telecom. There are also another sales tax on companies working in aviation or companies or stores working to sell foods and nutrition on the malls. So there are a couple of industries and sectors that are also eligible for sales tax. We have also tax on production for some kind of products, especially cement. So since cement is also one of the sectors that are heavily invested in Iraq. So this is also worth noting.
Thank you much for your comment. What was your name again?
My name is Ali Hamid. I'm a legal director.
Hi.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ali Hamid. No, thank you much, first of all, for all the presenters here. I would suggest let's have a Q&A session. And Mr. Hamid would be great as well if you have some also some comments to Iraq. I'm happy to hear that. And yeah, the floor is open for Q&A. So I'm happy to receive questions for UAE and then for Iraq, and provide some more insights, please.
Sorry, is that to me a question?
No, I just opened the floor for Q&A. So
okay.
if you have questions, you're more than welcome to come up right now. And then also, like, if you have comments, would be highly appreciated if you could comments. I think it provides great value.
Yes. For comments, I would say that although in Kurdistan the law is different when it comes to many laws, for example, the company law, it was the same, but it was amended in Baghdad. But here, when it was amended, it was limiting the ownership of foreigners in Iraq to 49%. So this amendment was not adopted in Kurdistan because here of the constitutional system, whereby if the federal parliament enacted a law, it will not apply automatically in Kurdistan unless Kurdistan's parliament certifies that amendment, meaning that the restriction of 49% for foreign shareholding is not applicable yet in Kurdistan. So investors are advised urgently and extremely to set up a business in Kurdistan 100% owned by them. And then what they can do, either if they want to work in Kurdistan, that would be fine, or they can get some kind of recognition for their companies in Baghdad. So in this way, you can somehow maneuver this restriction. So why should they do it urgently? Because it's just a matter of time. Maybe Kurdistan Parliament will adopt the same amendment of foreign restrictions. So it's better to expedite the process if, in case any of the gentlemen and ladies wants to set up a business in Iraq.
Thank you for your comment, Ali.
You're
Any
welcome.
other comments or questions?
Okay, a question for Nisreen.
Yes.
Nisreen, just a question. Where do you think is the best region to start the business?
It depends. You cannot really say this because I think that you have to have some criteria. Of course, the Central South, where the most of the business is generated, 75% of the businesses for foreign companies are generated in Central South. However, it is more complex, much more complex. You don't have, for example, 100% ownership and so on and so on. And also, the security situation is not really stable. So you have to really see if you have the financial backup and also the resources like human resources and so on. Yeah, to do this. So if I would say from my experience, it is, yes, it is less less business in the north, but it is much more stable and much safer and much easier, you know, also because well, there are not so many tribes like in the Central South, and you have more homogeneous, let's say, okay, some will argue that, but it is much more easier for to start maybe here. But you have to consider that most of the business is done in the Central South.
Okay, thank you, Nisreen. Just another one. Can I use my business license or company registration to do business all over Iraq, or is it restricted?
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is restricted. There are two different separate jurisdictions. So you have to be, first of all, you have to be aware, or you have to make yourself familiar, or you have to be clear where you want to do business. So you cannot use, for example, your company registration to conduct business or hire people in Central South and vice versa. And also the same applies for the investment license. So no, you can't. You can adjust it, yes, but you can't like just with one and do just with one license in one region and then do business all over Iraq. Okay.
Can I also comment about the presentation?
Okay.
Maybe we let others speak, and then if you have questions.
Sure.
Okay, so please go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I represent an example here. I work as a technical manager with an IT and consulting company in Dubai. So
can you please introduce yourself? I didn't.
Yeah, I am Shamal Sabah. I work.
Okay.
Yeah, I work in Erbil, Kurdistan region, KRG.
Yes.
So I have been through your presentation during the session. It was talking about joint venture. My company is doing joint venture with Falcon Group. Abacus Cambridge Partner is a company, an IT consulting company in Dubai, and we have joint venture with Falcon Group in Erbil, which is Empire area is one of their projects, Falcon Group. So I am their staff. I represent the company in Kurdistan region and Iraq. We have projects in Iraq, in the rest of Iraq as well. KRG region, we are mostly active here. So I can say it's not that difficult if you want to set up business joint ventures in the region. In KRG is much easier, and there are also resources if you want to, in case, hire local people to help you, or the local people also can travel to the rest of Iraq as well and grow the business at the rest of the Iraq. So as I said, I represent an example, and I am keen to help anyone with you guys as well to enter Iraq market.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Shomal, I thought that this is why I think we are friends on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, nice to meet
you. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for the insights, Shamal. I think it's very helpful. Thank you very much. Any more questions from someone, or comments or contributions?
Ali has raised his hand.
I have a comment here regarding the risks in Iraq. I think there is also another risk that was not mentioned, which is unfortunately undeveloped legal system. If you have noticed while you are reading the applicable laws, you will see that most of the laws go back to 30 or 40 years. And there are some advancements in all over across the globe that was not reflected legally in Iraq. And even for example, the concept of holding company that was adopted very recently in 2019. So I have seen such problem. I had seen, such problem before, whereby a mega investor comes to Iraq, invests over 1 billion USD in Iraq, but clashes with the lack of legal system to protect some of his or her interests. So what investors are advised to do is, when they want to enter into a legal relationship, especially with the government, they have to run very deep due diligence and legal analysis and try to encapture all the worst scenarios. I don't need to be pessimistic, but the worst can happen in Iraq. So it's better that to be equipped, because if you leave it to the legal system and the public policy, you will not see any help or aid there. So it's better to regulate it in a form of contract, and also have another jurisdiction to control any disputes, and have also very good remedy clauses.
Thank you for your contribution, Ali. I think it's very helpful, and absolutely. I mean, I do agree. Maybe a few comments. The different, especially with cross-border transactions, where you have holding structures in more secure jurisdictions. So one example is the UAE with the free zones and with the legal security, is what you mentioned, and having then investments and having a joint venture there, or holding structure where you then invest into, let's say, more challenging markets. This applies equally for the Middle East and some of the countries as well, for the sub-Saharan African continent. And that's the reason why we also present here the UAE. Any UAE questions? Because I feel I'm not actually asked any question here for the UAE. So all about Iraq. I love Iraq, but UAE has also something to offer. So any more questions for Iraq?
For UAE, one question.
For UAE, sorry.
Yes. I know, just to, maybe I'll position it to Abdelhamid. Abdelhamid, you mentioned a lot about the company forms. So I just wanted to understand, what type of companies do people prefer to establish in UAE?
Actually, most of the company people prefer to establish is LLC, one-person company, but it depends actually on quantum of work, because if it's a big capital or something like this, he will go through a joint stock company. And even if he would like to deal with foreign people more, he would establish inside the free zone.
Maybe to add as well, Abdelhamid, thanks a lot for the insights. For UAE, I think it really depends where your local audience is, who's your buyers. Is it in mainland? Is it more in free zone? Are you more re-exporting or importing within UAE? So I think it's important. And then as well, from a regulator perspective, of course, certain activities can mostly only done for financial services, where you have certain restriction limitations in mainland or in free zones. We talk about DFC and ADGM, which provide different opportunities. And then as well there with the change legislation on ownership, as Abdul Hamid already correctly mentioned, UAE is opening up even for mainland, which was quite restricted, a 51-49 percentage or even more to based on the regulatory field, gives right now the opportunity for 100% ownership for certain selected activities to incentivize more or less the onshore and mainland business. So that's, I think, maybe also some considerations. Judy, are there any more other questions? Because I'm aware of the time, so we should finish in at some point, because I think that I guess they have also some urgent work and some other stuff. Probably one more question, and I think we can then complete the session, and then, yeah, happy to have them all other questions.
One last question from Dustin Saba, who said, what are the obstacles to opening a small business in UAE?
If I may take the question, I mean, obstacles, small business. I mean, again, I mean, on the different options we just mentioned, if you want to have your own entity or subsidiary, and depending on mainland or free zone, I would say the UAE is probably not the most inexpensive option. Within the Middle East, I would say, and I can confidently say that UAE is definitely one of the most sophisticated jurisdictions all of them. But it's not very cheap. So you have to be ready to have a certain budget. And challenges for small businesses, we have VAT, we have economic substance regulations, which is more or less demonstrating that you do proper activities and you don't have more or less just shell companies. It's one of the anti-tax evasion system structures incentivized by the OECD, implemented by the UAE government. So in the end, you have a lot of regulatory management obligations. Failing them would give you penalties, fine, until the license is going to be removed. So I think for a small company with a limited amount of resources, cash, I think that's probably one of the most difficult parts. Other than that, I think the UAE is extremely well connected within the Middle East and Eastern Africa and Asia. So if you are good in acquiring clients and business partners in business, I think the UAE is a very good place to really have exposure to various markets and to drive your business relatively quickly. Probably that's the upside on that. That's maybe my take on that. I think this probably was the Mr. Dastan, was it answered, or you have any more comments on that? Then I can quickly address it before I finish the session.
Yeah, thank you very much. Pretty much answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nisreen, if you would be fine, and all the audience, I would then close the webinar. I would thank all of you for coming. Nisreen, please, I think it's good to have, if you have some words, some final words.
Yeah, thank you so much for your interest, and thank you very much also to the companies that were here, but also especially thank you for the authorities, representative of the authorities, Mr. Fethi, Amira, and Mrs. Karis.
Thank you very much. And again, for all any inquiries, please get in touch with us. I think you have our website, you have our contact details, and Nisreen and myself, or ourselves, the whole team would be happy to support you with all your inquiries in the jurisdiction we're operating in. Thank you very much. Have a great day and the great rest of the week. Thank you. Bye-bye. Ma salama.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.